Your soulmate has exactly 3 days to tell you something. God told me to warn you. My beloved child, be still for a moment, because what you are about to hear is not meant to create fear, it is meant to awaken your awareness. There are moments in life that arrive without noise, without warning, and yet they quietly reshape everything that comes after them. This is one of those moments. Somewhere beyond what your eyes can measure, a conversation has already begun. A heart that has remained silent for far too long is wrestling with words it can no longer keep hidden. What if the next few days were not ordinary at all? What if every delay, every coincidence, every unexpected feeling has been preparing the stage for one truth that refuses to stay buried? Stay with this message, because every sentence builds towards something that may explain questions you've carried longer than you realize. Imagine someone standing at the edge of a bridge they have wanted to cross for a very long time. They take one step forward, then another step back. Not because they lack feelings, but because they fear what honesty might change. That is the energy surrounding this story. Your soulmate has not been untouched by the same invisible currents that have been moving through your own life. They have replayed memories in quiet moments. They have wondered whether the distance between you was created by circumstance, or by timing that neither of you could control. Every unanswered thought has become another page in a chapter they never intended to write. Yet something has shifted. A silent pressure has begun to replace hesitation. A realization has started whispering louder than every excuse. And once that whisper becomes impossible to ignore, everything begins to move. But listen carefully, because this is where the message becomes even more unusual. The title speaks of 3 days, not as a prediction carved in stone, but as a powerful symbol of urgency, reflection, and decision. Sometimes life presents a window where truth feels impossible to postpone. Whether that window lasts 3 days or simply represents a brief season, the meaning remains the same. The opportunity to speak honestly does not stay open forever. There comes a moment when silence becomes heavier than words. Perhaps you have sensed this without knowing why. Perhaps you have felt an unexplained pull to slow down, to pay attention, to notice the little signs you would normally overlook. Those feelings are not asking you to chase anyone. They are inviting you to remain present so you don't miss what is naturally unfolding. Now let me ask you something that very few people ever stop to consider. What if the message your heart has been waiting for isn't dramatic at all? What if it arrives through a simple conversation, an unexpected greeting, a familiar name appearing at the right time, or even a chance encounter that seems completely ordinary? The greatest turning points rarely announce themselves with fireworks. They enter quietly, disguised as everyday moments. That is why awareness matters more than expectation. Those who become consumed by impatience often overlook the very answer standing in front of them. But those who remain calm begin noticing patterns others never see. And when the pieces finally connect, they realize nothing was random after all. Here's another thought that deserves your attention. Your soulmate's greatest challenge may not be finding the right words, it may be believing they deserve to say them. Regret has a strange way of convincing people that they are already too late. Doubt whispers that honesty will only reopen old wounds. Pride suggests that silence is safer than vulnerability. Yet truth has its own quiet strength. It waits patiently until pretending becomes more exhausting than speaking openly. That inner battle is often invisible to everyone else, but it changes a person from the inside out. While the world sees someone moving through ordinary days, a completely different story is unfolding within them. Every sunrise becomes another reminder that unfinished conversations cannot remain unfinished forever. So if you've been wondering why certain emotions have resurfaced recently, why memories seem clearer than before, why unexpected thoughts arrive without invitation, don't rush to dismiss them. Sometimes life slows our pace just enough for us to notice what has always been there. This is not an invitation to force events. It is an invitation to trust that clarity often appears when we stop trying to control every outcome. Hold on to that thought, because the next part reveals why this silent countdown matters far more than anyone realizes, and why the message waiting to be spoken could change both hearts in a way neither expected. Until then, keep listening closely, because the story is only beginning. A quiet question is about to change everything, so don't let your attention wander now. The next part of this journey isn't about guessing the future, it is about recognizing the moment when hidden truth finally becomes impossible to ignore. Think about it for a second. How many times have people waited for the perfect time to speak, only to realize that perfection never arrived? Sometimes the only thing standing between two lives is one honest sentence. And what if that sentence has already formed inside your soulmate's heart? What if they have whispered it to themselves 100 times but have never found the courage to let anyone else hear it? Stay with me, because the picture is becoming clearer. There is something remarkable about a person who has reached the limit of silence. At first they avoid difficult conversations. Then they distract themselves with work, responsibilities, and routines. They convince themselves that tomorrow will be easier than today. But tomorrow keeps becoming another tomorrow. Eventually, the heart begins asking questions the mind can no longer answer. What if I never say what I truly feel? What if the opportunity quietly disappears? Those questions do not create panic, they create awakening. They invite a person to become honest with themselves before they become honest with someone else. That inner transformation is often invisible, yet it changes every decision that follows. Picture a traveler standing before two roads. One road feels familiar because it asks nothing new. The other requires courage because it leads into the unknown. Most people assume bravery means having no fear at all. But true courage is choosing truth even while uncertainty remains. That is the crossroads your soulmate appears to be approaching. The weight they have carried is no longer simply about emotions. It has become a question of authenticity. How long can anyone hide what continues asking to be expressed? The answer is never forever. Every sincere feeling eventually searches for a voice. Now pause for just a moment and consider your own position in this unfolding story. Notice that this message has never encouraged chasing, forcing, or expecting a particular outcome. Instead, it points towards something much more powerful: readiness. When your spirit is calm, you recognize opportunities that anxious minds overlook. You hear meaning inside ordinary conversations. You notice timing that once seemed invisible. Preparation is not about controlling the future. It is about becoming the kind of person who can receive clarity when it finally arrives. That alone changes everything. Perhaps this is also why you've been feeling drawn toward reflection lately. Not because you are missing something, but because you are growing into someone capable of understanding it differently. Growth often happens quietly. There is no applause. No dramatic announcement. Just a gradual realization that you no longer react the way you once did. You listen more carefully. You judge less quickly. You begin seeing people not only for who they have been, but for who they are becoming. That shift creates space for conversations that could never have happened before. And here is something worth remembering. When people finally decide to tell the truth, they rarely begin with the biggest revelation. They start with small moments. A simple greeting. A familiar memory. An unexpected question. These tiny openings may seem ordinary, but they are often the doorway to something much deeper. The heart rarely rushes. It unfolds one layer at a time, waiting to see if it is safe enough to continue. If that moment comes, everything that once felt confusing begins connecting like pieces of a puzzle that were always meant to fit together. If this message has spoken to something you've quietly felt, I'd love to know your thoughts. Share them in the comments, and if these stories continue encouraging you to reflect with hope and wisdom, consider subscribing so we can continue exploring these meaningful journeys together. Someone else may also need this reminder today, so sharing it with them could be the encouragement they didn't know they were waiting for. But don't leave yet, because the next chapter reveals the one hidden obstacle that has delayed this conversation for so long. It isn't distance. It isn't timing alone. It is something far more surprising, and once you understand it, the entire meaning behind this symbolic, 3-day window begins to make sense. Stay a little longer, the most revealing part of the story is still ahead. A single realization can arrive without warning, and when it does, it changes the meaning of everything that came before. Don't rush past this moment. The final piece of this chapter isn't about coincidence, it's about perspective. Sometimes we spend so much time waiting for a sign that we forget the greatest sign is the quiet transformation happening within us. Listen closely, because what comes next may be the very reason you were drawn to this story today. Imagine the sunrise after a long night. The world doesn't suddenly become new, the light simply reveals what was already there. In the same way, your soulmate may soon begin seeing your connection through completely different eyes. The doubts that once felt convincing begin to lose their power. The excuses that delayed honest communication start sounding smaller than the truth they've been trying to avoid. This isn't because someone forced them to change. It's because genuine clarity has a way of arriving exactly when a person is finally ready to receive it. Think about every unexpected delay you've experienced recently. At the time, it may have felt frustrating. You may have wondered why answers seemed so distant or why life appeared to pause when you wanted movement. But what if those pauses were quietly protecting something still being prepared? A conversation spoken too early can create confusion. The same conversation, spoken at the right moment, can create understanding. Timing doesn't erase the value of truth, it often gives truth the space it needs to be heard with an open heart. Now here's something many people overlook. The message your soulmate may want to share is not only about the past. It is also about who they have become. People grow through experiences they never expected. They learn patience where they once had urgency. They discover humility where they once had certainty. They begin valuing honesty more than comfort. That kind of inner change cannot be rushed, and it cannot be imitated. It can only be lived. Perhaps that is why this season feels different. It isn't simply preparing a conversation. It is preparing two people to hear that conversation in a completely different way. But there is another side to this story, and it is just as important. While your soulmate has been finding their voice, you have also been changing. You have learned lessons that only time could teach. You have become stronger than you once realized. The person who receives tomorrow's conversation will not be the same person who was waiting yesterday. Growth has been happening on both paths, even if neither of you noticed it while it was unfolding. Sometimes destiny isn't about bringing two people together quickly. Sometimes it's about making sure they arrive wiser than when they first met. So if the coming days feel unusually meaningful, don't let impatience steal your peace. Continue living with hope, kindness, and confidence. Notice the little moments. Appreciate the unexpected conversations. Stay open to possibilities without becoming trapped by expectations. The strongest hearts are not those that demand immediate answers. They are the ones that remain calm enough to recognize meaningful answers when they naturally arrive. And before this chapter closes, remember one final truth. Whether the 3 days become a literal timeline or simply represent a season of important decisions, the heart of this message remains unchanged. Honesty has a remarkable way of finding its moment. When truth is ready to be spoken, it carries a quiet strength that no amount of fear can silence forever. If someone has been searching for the courage to tell you something genuine, the journey toward that moment may already be unfolding. This is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter where uncertainty slowly gives way to understanding, where silence makes room for sincerity, and where the future is shaped not by assumptions, but by authentic choices. Stay aware. Stay hopeful. And above all, keep your heart open, because sometimes the most extraordinary turning points arrive so gently that only those who are truly paying attention recognize them when they finally appear. One last thought before you leave. What if this message was never about counting days, but about recognizing the moment when everything finally becomes clear? Stay with me until the very end, because the closing truth often carries the greatest meaning. Sometimes a story doesn't end with a loud announcement. Sometimes it ends with a quiet certainty that changes the way you see every step that came before. Picture a river that has been flowing beneath thick morning mist. For a long time, the water was always moving, yet you couldn't clearly see its direction. Then the sun rises, the mist begins to disappear, and suddenly the path of the river seems obvious. Nothing about the river changed. Only your view became clearer. That is exactly how many life-changing conversations begin. They don't create a new reality, they reveal the one that has been forming all along. Your soulmate's heart has been traveling through a season of reflection. Every unanswered question, every memory, every quiet moment has slowly led them toward one realization: some words become heavier the longer they remain unspoken. There comes a point where honesty feels lighter than silence. Not because every outcome is guaranteed, but because truth brings peace that uncertainty never can. That quiet shift is more powerful than dramatic promises. It is the beginning of genuine courage. At the same time, your own journey has been preparing you in ways you may not have noticed. Perhaps you've become more patient. Perhaps you've learned not to force every answer. Perhaps you've discovered that peace doesn't come from controlling tomorrow, it comes from trusting today's growth. Those lessons matter. They shape the way you will receive whatever comes next. Sometimes the greatest blessing is not simply hearing the message you've been waiting for, but becoming the person who can truly understand it. So if you wake tomorrow with a renewed sense of hope, carry it gently. If an unexpected opportunity appears, meet it with calm confidence. If an ordinary conversation feels more meaningful than usual, don't dismiss it too quickly. Life often whispers before it speaks clearly. The smallest moments can quietly become the foundation for the biggest changes. And remember this above everything else: never let fear write the ending of a story that honesty still has the chance to transform. The future isn't built by assumptions. It is shaped one truthful decision at a time. Whatever lies ahead, let your heart remain grounded in wisdom, kindness, and hope. Those qualities never lose their value. If this journey encouraged you or gave you a fresh perspective, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Reading your experiences helps build a community where people inspire one another. And if these uplifting stories resonate with you, subscribing is simply a way to continue exploring more meaningful journeys together. As this chapter comes to a close, carry one final reminder with you. The title may have spoken of 3 days, but the deeper message has always been about readiness. When hearts are ready, truth finds its voice. When minds are open, understanding replaces confusion. And when hope is stronger than doubt, even an ordinary day can become the beginning of an extraordinary new chapter. So leave this message not with anxiety, but with quiet confidence. Walk forward with gratitude. Stay aware of the opportunities unfolding around you. Trust that meaningful conversations arrive in their proper season. And when that season comes, you'll realize this wasn't simply a story you listened to, it was an invitation to remain open to the beautiful possibilities that life still has waiting just ahead. A final whisper remains, not because the story is unfinished, but because every meaningful journey deserves one last moment of reflection. Before you move on, pause here for just a little longer. There is a difference between hearing words and allowing them to settle into your heart. And perhaps that difference is exactly why you were meant to reach this final chapter. Think back to the beginning of this message. It spoke of a heart carrying something that could no longer remain hidden. Now look at where that journey has led. This was never simply about someone finding the courage to speak. It was also about you discovering the strength to remain hopeful without becoming impatient. Those two paths have been moving toward each other all along, even when neither seemed aware of the other's progress. Life has an extraordinary way of connecting moments that once appeared unrelated. A delay that frustrated you yesterday may become the very reason tomorrow unfolds so beautifully. A conversation you almost ignored could become the answer to a question you've carried for months. An ordinary day may quietly become unforgettable simply because someone finally decides to be completely honest. That is why awareness matters. Not because every moment is dramatic, but because the most meaningful moments often arrive with remarkable simplicity. Now imagine your future self looking back on this season. Will they remember endless waiting? Or will they remember a time when they learned to trust the process instead of fearing the unknown? Every experience has been adding something valuable to your journey. Every challenge has quietly strengthened your perspective. Every unanswered question has encouraged you to grow into someone who values truth over assumptions and peace over uncertainty. Here's something beautiful to carry with you. Genuine connections are not measured by how loudly they begin, but by how deeply they grow. Real understanding isn't built through perfect timing alone. It grows through patience, honesty, compassion, and the willingness to see another person's heart with fresh eyes. If your soulmate truly has something meaningful to share, let it arrive naturally. A conversation born from sincerity will always carry more value than one rushed by pressure. And if, in the coming days, nothing happens exactly as you expected, don't let disappointment steal the lesson you've gained. Sometimes the greatest transformation isn't external, it's internal. Perhaps this message was preparing you to become calmer, wiser, and more confident